Welcome to Business Coaching Secrets with Karl Bryan. If you want to attract new high-end coaching clients, fill live events, and build a wildly profitable coaching practice where business owners pay, stay, and refer, you've come to the right place. In this podcast, Karl provides his keys to the kingdom for finding and signing high-paying clients and building the coaching business of your dreams. Here we go.
Hey everybody, and welcome to Business Coaching Secrets. This is your boy Road Dogg with the king himself, King Karl Bryan. Sir, are you here?
I'm doing fabulously, my man.
Excellent.
Good to be here, dude. Good to be here. What's happening in Road Dogg's world?
Just there's so much going on. I don't even know where to start. Because again, it's just a big rabbit hole if we even open that Pandora's box of what's going on in this mind. It's a very scary place that even sometimes I care not to face. So we'll just leave that one alone for today. What's that?
It's an entertaining place, Road Dogg.
If
you get a chance to drink a beer with Road Dogg, you need to take up on it.
It's like a dramatic kind of a comedy situation is what it is, right? It's like you got lots of clowns and jugglers and all sorts of weird stuff happening, and you're like, what's really going on in there?
I understand. I'd like to pretend like I don't, but I have a monkey mind as well, my man, so there you go.
Anyways, let's get back at this. We got some questions flying at us as per usual, and I got a couple of them here that I think are pretty good and very appropriate in terms of kind of where we're at right now. So I'm just going to hop right in if that's okay with you. First, right out of the chute in the first one here is, and this is beautiful, I love this. I'm building my 12-month plan and wondering if you have a framework you'd recommend. How perfect is that? You know how this goes. Everybody loves building their long-term goals and vision boards and plans and everything else. And by the end of the year, it's like, what was that again? What was I going for? But do you have a framework in place?
Yeah, I mean, again, so a frame, I would say, maybe just what we were talking about a minute ago, everybody's personality, everybody's business is going to be different. So what I think is the appropriate answer here would be what you'd want to do. Like we're in 2020, right? So what you want to do is like if I create my 2030 vision, what I should do in 2020 becomes painfully obvious, right? And my opinion, and again, I've expressed this in different ways on many of the podcasts, it's just, you need that long-term vision, right? Like most folks, again, it's day to day, it's highly tactical. We talk a good game about how strategy will eat tactics for breakfast. But if you really look at the average coach's day-to-day activities, I would say that they're insanely tactical. So the answer that I would give is, as far as a framework, yes, create a vision for 10 years. And it's not that it's 2020. If it's 2021, then the vision is for 2031, right? So create a 10-year vision for yourself, and then suddenly what you do short-term is going to become painfully obvious. And like in my own world, an example of that is like, profit acceleration software, the 2.0 version, came out recently. The 1.0 cost a fortune, a lot of training, a lot of development, in order to get it to the stage and then to get 2.0 out. And it's like, if, you could imagine that a lot of money was spent on it, and then there's a big fat bill to the tune of 6 figures required, and plus. But the bottom line is, the question is, do we keep going? Do I keep forking over dough for this, et cetera, et cetera? And the question is, well, my plan is to create my personal vision, right? Whether you agree with it or you don't agree with it, it might sound too grandiose for some listening, and I'm totally fine. I don't give a crap, right? It's my vision, not yours, so I own it. And mine is to set the standard for the entire business coaching industry. I don't believe anybody has done it. I think that it's a problem with the business coaching industry is it's a little bit too, what's the word? You know what I mean? Just kind of ad hoc, and everybody's just kind of going for it. And there's a lot of unqualified folks out there doing coaching and then letting the business owners down, and it's not good for the industry. So I have taken it upon myself to decide that that's going to be me. I'm nowhere near there. I'm not pretending. I'm not delusional. But the bottom line is, question, when I'm sitting here looking at a bill for the software and I want to get it further ahead, if you know what I mean, like 2030, if that's my vision, what's the answer? And the answer is a painfully obvious one. And the answer is that it's not, this iteration is not going to be perfect. It is not going to be where it ultimately needs to be. So not only do we have to spend the money, the resources, the time, provide the focus to it now, we need to continue to as we move along, right? So, and I don't want this to be about me, because that's absolutely not my intention there. More to the point, I want to give you guys, you asked me for a framework. There's a framework for you, right? So that's what I think folks should be doing. And here's another thing, like provide your vision for 2030 and then be insanely flexible with the roadmap as you move along, but be painfully dogmatic with the results, right? So, you know what I mean? Like, so yeah, the vision that you create for 2030, don't give up on that. But by the way, if you also, as you move along in 1, 2, 3 years, you start changing directions, be willing to go change that long-term goal, but don't be flighty about it where it's back and forth. Otherwise, again, your vision for 2030 sucks, right? That's the bottom line. I mean, when you create that vision, you want to spend some time, and I guess the wording is just get it right. But anyway, so that's what I would say. I think that people are too flexible with the 2030 roadmap, whereas they should be totally flexible with the short-term roadmap. Do you know what I mean? So you got to be totally dogmatic with the bigger picture, and then everything, I think, becomes so much easier to decide, when and if you should do it. And the most data-rich information stream in the world is what? It's action. And by the way, it's going to be different for me. It'll be different for Road Dog, and it's going to be different for you. The data, everybody's looking for solutions. Remember, the super intelligent people with crazy IQs come up with good statements, good answers, right? Well, geniuses come up with great questions. They've got a kid's mind, a child's mind. So keep that in mind. But the most data-rich source in the world for you is your own action. That will tell you what you're good and what you're not good at. Like, and again, the example of my own world, as I started writing these emails, whatever, I can't even remember when I started them. I mean, it's a long time ago now, but, and then I started a daily email. When I started a daily email, dead set, it was 1 o'clock in the morning. It was an accident, right? I was like, oh, screw this. This email is way too good. I should make 10 out of this. And I said, look, I'm going to do it daily. I made the pressure public, and all of a sudden I realized that whether I'm good or not, I get told with semi-regularity that my writing sucks and I'm a bit of a dickhead. I'm good with it, right? Like, I'm not worried about criticism from someone who I'm not looking for advice from, right? So the bottom line is those emails, I find them fun. I think that I get a lot of, good information out there. That's just the source. And I would have never dreamt that, a number of years ago, not in a million years, that I would do a daily email. That would have sounded like hell on earth to me. So the bottom line, the data rich, so that where are you going to find out if you're on the right path for 2030? Well, your actions and the results of them will tell you if you're on the right track. You'd be super intelligent, with tracking those results and whatnot. But action, right? The best plan in the world, the perfect plan, is the one that's never going to get bloody implemented, right? I'd rather you have no plan and no vision and, rip around like a wounded dog, phoning business owners, contacting business owners, helping business owners. Then, ultimately you'd refine your approach, and the action would provide you an enormously rich content and data to know what you should be doing moving forward. So, Road Dog, there's my answer, man. As far as the framework, create a 10-year vision, and it becomes painfully obvious what you do today and tomorrow.
It is funny how we all omit the 10-year. We always go to 1 year. And by the way, your 1 a.m. Mistake, I guess, by typing that first email, as Bob Ross would say, that was a happy little accident, Karl. And Bob Ross is the man, the myth, the legend. We all know Bob Ross. And by the way, I want to add in, when we say 10-year, I came across something on Instagram, and it's kind of speaks to this too. And I'm gonna put you on the spot here because I know you love it and you're sweating bullets when I do this. you've got to be flexible, right? Like again, when you have a 10-year vision, like you're going to have to make some changes. Like you talk about, the profit acceleration software 2.0, like the way that's going to look, you don't even know the iterations that you're going to go through and everything else 10 years from now. You could probably have no idea, because when you look back 10 years ago, and here's the question I have for you, like think of it this way. What's something that you can't live without now that didn't exist 10 years ago?
Yeah. So, and by the way, you asking me that question?
I am asking you that question because
Yeah,
I can't. I'm drawing a blank because think about 10 years ago. Like was like any of the social media stuff, all these platforms, all this stuff around. Like we take a look at the dependencies that we have on technology and everything else. That's more my point, right? It's just the evolution, and that's why you need to be, as you said, flexible in your plan, because things are going to change and evolve over that time. But I'd be curious if you have an answer top of your head.
Yep. I can tell you, well, again, you know what I mean? There'd probably be a number of them. But one straight off the top of my head is Google Calendar, right? For the disorganized salespeople, they're probably laughing. The highly analytical, strategic types, the engineers have got their hand over their eyes right now going, he just said what? But I tell you, my Google Calendar, Road Dog, you've seen my calendar. I mean, I run a pretty crazy back to back to back to back to back to back to back kind of schedule. Not all of which is, and it just like when something like I put stuff on my calendar, like, time set aside to think, as an example, goes on my calendar. And again, I take my phone, and put it in a different room. I personally go into a room where there is no, there is no phone, there is no computer. But anyway, so I run a really, really, active calendar, and Google Calendar provides me, like, whenever I speak to somebody and I want to make a note or that sort of thing, tends to find its way into my calendar. So I find myself using my calendar to guide me, but I'm also searching it on a regular basis for, different bits of information. So that would be, that would be a tool I would use. And I would agree with what you're saying. Like profit acceleration software, like I don't have a clue. I just know that it's going to be the standard. And if it's not going to be the standard, then something else is going to be the standard, but I'm going to be the guy that's going to create it, in my opinion, by the way. And that's, again, I'm a little bit delusional, possibly. I'm cool with that, right? So anyways, that's the answer I'd give you there, brother.
That's an interest. Google Calendar. Wow. Okay. All right.
I love it.
He's there. I imagine Karl Bryan walking around with like the thick day-to-day planner with stuff and receipts falling out of it. That was probably you 10 years ago.
There was a time. Absolutely. You had me on this call 10 years ago, man. My Rolodex, dude. I can't live without this thing, man. Absolutely. That would have been my answer 10 years ago, man. So there you go.
Tammy's shaking her head going, oh, my God. Okay. Love it. Love it. Love it. You're going to love this question. What is your number one hack for a productivity shift?
Number one hack for productivity. That's a little, so that, and again, that's good. I like that. Again, we get mindset, right, with regularity here, Road Dog, right? So I kind of like that. I'd start with this. You are free, and therefore you are lost. I don't know who used that, by the way. I'm sure I'm stealing that from somebody. Don't know. But I know that the truth in it is absolutely insane. You are free, and therefore you are lost. Like, you have so many options. That's half of your challenge, right? Successful people act in the face of fear, whereas the average stands still, or worse, they run in the other direction, right? So productivity hack, like okay, I just said it a minute ago, like Google Calendar, like on my calendar, and we've done this on different podcasts. So time to think, TTT, okay, is something you should be taking 45 minutes and block an hour, by the way, because believe me, afterwards you're going to be exhausted in a weird way. But you should have time to think, where you sit in a room with my opinion is a pad of paper and a pen will get you a significantly better result than a notepad. But at the end of the day, I don't care. The bottom line is the result we're looking for is the result we're looking for. But sit down, ask yourself the question: look, what is going to make me significantly more productive this week? Okay, that could be an example of a great question. In your lonesome, you sit there and you come up with answers. And as you're moving along, you can come up with different questions and start answering them. But as a rule, you're asking yourself a really, really powerful question and coming up with answers to it. That, the productivity, because all of a sudden you start realizing that there's things you should be doing that you're not, or there's things that the 80-20, you should be spending significantly more time on something where, you're only spending limited time with it. And by the way, time to think and then time to measure is another and not back to back, right? Not a half hour for one and a half hour for the other, because again, your mind, much like when you public speak, you get off stage and you are absolutely exhausted. At least you're doing it the right way. That should absolutely be the case. If you're giving everything to your audience, if you got a room of 100 people, you have 100 people sucking energy from you, you should be exhausted. So time to measure is another 45-minute block that you should have on your calendar that, again, will make you so much more productive, because what you're going to be now acting on is going to be derived from things that you're actually measuring, like your 80-20s. Like everybody knows 80-20, right? Where 80% of your productivity will be derived from 20% of your activity. The problem is working out which 20%. And it's not always, sometimes it's obvious, and it's somebody who hasn't taken the time to step back and realize it, but often it'll surprise you a little bit in terms of what you really should should be working on. So, I would say productivity, and then here's the question. You're trying to be productive, but you're trying to be productive doing what, right? So if your goal is to go and get a coaching client this week, look, that's fine, and high five, right? But that is such a pathetic, lame goal. Like, to me, by the way, and please, hey, if this is just where you're at, that's where you're at. That's great. But I got to tell you, I have closed 7 high-end coaching clients in one day. And once again, this isn't me patting myself on the back. This is trying to give you context in terms of where your goal might be at, right? But getting one, if your goal is that simple and, average, in my opinion, you're going to expect to get painfully average results. Like, find a way to put 100 business owners in a room in 90 days, and then provide a level of value to those 100 business owners that would make all their eyes water. Now, that's a better vision. That's a better goal. And the goal also, by the way, should be derived, like, the goal is to put 100 people in the room and then change their lives positively as a result of spending time with you on that day, right? Like, that's an example of a goal that would allow you to be significantly more productive, right? Like, I said this again on a podcast not long ago, but a friend of mine, he was the one of the top 10 affiliates for the Tony Robbins, Dean Graziosi launch, right, of their mastermind program. And then Tony came in and did a certain amount of coaching with the top 10 guys, right? He was in and he was out. The number one takeaway that he took from it, and I believe that the number one bit of advice that Tony said that he could provide these guys was to provide a bigger vision for themselves, right? Because again, if your goal is to go and feed your family, you're going to get one level of distinction, one level of breakthrough. If your goal is to provide for your entire family, including mother-in-laws and fathers, and like the entire, a family of 20, you're going to get a higher level of distinction. If your goal is to, stop homelessness and poverty within your city, you're going to get a higher level distinction. If your goal is to stop poverty and homelessness in your state or your province, a higher level distinction. If your goal, like Tony Robbins, his goal is to, I don't know quite what it is, but, basically alleviate alleviate hunger in a nutshell, right? But mostly for, young folks, right? But so that's the goal that he's trying to achieve. The level of distinction that he gets as a result of that is significantly higher, right? So I'm trying to answer this in a way that before you decide whether or not you're productive, my question is, what are you trying to accomplish? And maybe if part of the problem is that the goal is significantly too small, like unimpressive on steroids. Create a monster. Get totally, like, delusion can be a really beautiful place, right? In fact, the happiest people on the planet are the most, but basically somebody who's really happy is normally delusional, right? Flat out. Like, it may sound a little bit crazy, but this is not my. These are statistics that are shown all over the place. Or what does Tupac Shakur say? Dreams are real. Dreams are real. Reality is wrong. That's Tupac Shakur, right? Ended up getting murdered, by the way, which is not ideal. But dreams are real. Reality is wrong. That's a very different way of looking at the world, right? Quite frankly, that's a delusional way of looking at the world. But I'm sitting here. Tupac died, I don't know, a couple decades ago, and we're here quoting him. Maybe he's onto something there, right? So the people with, delusion could be a beautiful thing. Like in the end, you're sitting on your deathbed. The regrets that you're going to have are going to be chances you didn't take, relationships you didn't have, and the decisions you took too long to make, right? Think about that, right? So again, on your deathbed, your regrets will be chances you didn't take, relationships you didn't have, and then decisions that you took too long to make, right? Think about that. So I think that productivity, I think it's again, very much should be kept in context. And my question is, I'd want to see what your goal for your productivity is before I could tell you, and that might be the biggest hack I could ever give you. But maybe the person who's asking this question, but I highly doubt it, right? Because again, you can tell by the way it's worded, probably doesn't have this monster vision. So my guess is that that's going to be pretty good advice. And I think that that's pretty good advice for everybody. And by the way, Tony Robbins, you may love him, you might hate him, that's fine, but you can't argue with his results. And he took his top 10 affiliates, and amongst, if it was not the number one thing, it was absolutely right up there. It's just that people didn't have a big enough vision for themselves, and then he helped them carve that. So that might be the best hack right there, Road Dog.
So the funny thing is, this is interesting to me because so you quote Tupac? This is happening now. This is a thing that you don't quote. Like this was the ultimate for you to get an assist on Wayne Gretzky's ultimate quote of all time, and you didn't take it.
What's that? What is it?
You're going to miss 100% of the shots you don't take. You can pull out a Wayner quote, and you miss that shot. Wow. Really? You know what? You're going to regret that one on your deathbed.
Damn, man. There you go. That's why we've got you here, Road Dog. Keep me in line, brother. Well done,
there
dude.
It is.
Well done.
I want to add in, you talk about TTT a lot, and it is such a beautiful thing. Like, I journal daily. I'm 100% certain you do as well. It's one of those things that I've found, for me, that's been quite kind of interesting, right? I just saw Gary Vee video on this on TikTok, actually, just before the call, where he's talking about, like, who are you waiting to get permission from? Like, and this is when you're doing the total time to think of that grandiose, that delusional goal or target that you're setting for yourself. Like, why aren't you executing on that? Like, and I honestly believe, Karl, a lot of this comes down to we are all seeking someone's permission to do what we know what we need to do, right? Like, we know what we need to do, but we just are somehow not trusting ourselves enough to go out and just do it. Would you agree with that?
Universities are owned by business people. End of story. Mic drop. Right? So think about it. So in other words, you go to a university to get a signature on a piece of paper for somebody to say that you're qualified to do something. And if there are, so I make sure I qualify this. Like, if your goal is to become a nurse or to become a doctor, there's certain things that you do need to go into a classroom and school to learn, right? But stuff like what we're doing, business coaching, and there's a lot of really good courses, but I would highly suggest something along the lines of what, if anybody listening to this probably followed Steve Jobs in some way, shape, or form, but he's pretty famous for, he never graduated. He went to college, but he didn't actually go to college. He went to classes. He wasn't even enrolled. He went to classes that he thought he could learn something from. Right. So that was his undertaking. Like, so if you want to be a kick butt business coach, like getting an accreditation, I certify coaches and have my own. In fact, so we have a certification program for business coaches. I myself am not certified. I've never had anybody sign a piece of paper outside of a high school diploma, right? Which even that was a small miracle. I have no qualifications, and I don't stand on a mountaintop and pound my chest about it. It's just the reality is that I don't, right? And do you need one? Some people, psychology comes into play here. Some folks really need that piece of paper and that signature in order to feel worthy and, do you know what I mean? Like, be able to put themselves out as a business coach. And if that's the case, and that's why you're getting the certification, that I highly recommend it. Get the signature. It's important. Frame it, put it up on your wall, and it's going to make you feel good, and it's going to help your psychology. Then go for it. But, I am not, you know what I mean? That is not something that I feel like the average business coach should be worrying too much about. And I think there are a number of different industries where it's the exact same. Like, again, if, you've got a 18-year-old child and you're considering sending them to university or not, like, let's say you're going to spend $60,000 on a university degree, go buy them the local, let's assume that they like cooking, right? Go spend $60,000 and buy the local cafe that's semi-established and has a, decent chance of success. The education that they would get running their own cafe would take a degree and snap it over its knee 90% of the time, and that's any degree in anything, right? Because the skills that you would learn running your own cafe, you'd be able to take and put into life in so many different ways. So obviously I'm a little, I'm contrarian there big time. Universities are just not, universities are owned by business people is where I started, how I got off on that. So, you just got to keep that in mind. Go create your own program versus go and,
and this is why we get along.
Someone else's. It's something I would consider, right? But again, it's not a black and white answer nor statement, but I'd be questioning it I'd be asking some really good hard questions and taking some time to think before I spent a whole lot of money. And most certainly it's not even the money. It's the 4 years in school. Do you know how much you can accomplish in 4 years in your own cafe, right? Or whatever business it is? Like, blow your mind, right?
Well, and this is it, Karl. This is where you and I get along so well with that one, because I think we're both very highly unemployable besides for ourselves, really, at the end of the day. But so let's go on that tangent just for a second, because I know you get it quite a bit as well. Because I know that anytime I speak with somebody that's looking at becoming a business coach, it's the conversation of, I don't have the experience. I don't have a certification. I don't have the proper education behind that. Now, the reality, as in my experience anyways, because that's all I can ever speak of is my own experience, is I've never really been asked that by a business owner, because I think typically, and feel free to jump in and tell me I'm wrong, but if I'm at a point of a presentation or a conversation with a prospective business owner client, and they're asking me about my certification or education level, I've already lost that sale, because obviously I haven't demonstrated enough value to show them the results that I can actually achieve for them.
Yeah, 100. If look, two things. If somebody's asking for your credentials or a testimony, actually, I think maybe even a better example, Road Dog, and you tell me. But at the end of your consultation, you go to close coaching, and they ask you for a couple of phone numbers and people they can speak to. Forget it. Capitals, italicize it, underline it, bold it, mic drop. Like, they're not buying. Here's what they will do. You will give them their phone numbers. And of course, what are you going to do? Give them phone numbers of people who are going to say bad things about you? Do you know what I mean? Like, is that what's going to happen? Obviously not. So they will either not call them, and then of course they'll get too busy. And then of course you will have to take the time to email your clients and some folks to say, hey, Dave Smith might be calling you to ask XYZ, just a heads up. I hope that's cool, right? Or do you mind if I give your phone number to XYZ? What is the person who's receiving that email thinking, right? Like, they've got their own business, and in many cases they're happy to do it, and it's fine, right? So in some cases this is not black and white, right? So in some cases they're fine to do. But the reality is you have just lost credibility with the person that you sent the email. The person who asked for them either doesn't call or they do call and then from some magical reason they don't sign up for another reason. So if, by the way, a little bit of a rabbit hole here, but if you ever are put in that position where you're like, okay, you want 3 phone numbers, I'm going to provide them for you. So Road Dog, this is you, right? I'm the business coach, you're the business owner. You ask me for 3 testimonials. I go, Road Dog, I will do that for you. At the end of the day, look, here's my experience, but I'm all good with it. No big deal. But here's the deal, Road Dog. I'm going to give you 3 phone numbers and 3 email addresses of 3 people who are going to say amazing things about me. Just an FYI. I got a long list of them, right? So if I give you the phone numbers, I need your word. Look me in the eyes, or if they're on the phone, I need your agreement on this. You are going to contact them, all 3 of them. And then when you speak to them, if they say amazing things about me, and they are going to say amazing things about me, I would be amazed, then you do sign up for my coaching at $2,000 a month, like we just spoke about. Do I have your word? And it's either yes or it's no. Like at this stage, this is an opportunity for you, but the sale is probably lost, to be clear. But if you're going to make this sale, your goal at this moment is to increase. You don't have enough preeminence, and here's your chance to slam your foot down a little bit and say, we're going to play by my rules. Do you get that? Remember, you're the coach, right? So if there's not that preeminence, there's not that mentorship, if there's not that respect, it's not going anywhere anyways. This is somebody who's going to cancel in a month or 2 because they're going to work out that it's too much work, right? So anyways, Road Dog, you see it, 2 are very similar. If they're asking for your qualifications, look, this is, everything went wrong, just to be clear, and you need to correct it for your next crack at it. And then the other one is if they're asking for testimonials, they're not going to speak to those folks and then magically come and buy your coaching. And yes, of course, it does happen. But in football, they go for it on 4th and 1 and run a trick play, and it works. But it works once in a while, and the coach only does it once in a while, and there's for very good reasons. So thinking about that, you should not be getting asked these questions, and if you are, your process is flawed. End of story.
Yep, love it. Love it. It's so true. Like, and every time if I get put in that position, I'm like, and that's again, you take your reflection time and you go, okay, so I dropped the ball on that one. How do I tighten this up for the next time? And I think maybe this leads perfectly to the next question, actually, because again, it's all about dealing with criticism. And the question is about other people, but I am my own biggest critic. And I'm sure you are too. And that's where I think there's so much opportunity to grow and to learn. So let me just jump into the next question. Obviously, it's funny the way people ask questions. You say you can always read a lot into the way it's written. This might sound weak, but how do you deal with criticism, cancel clients, and feedback on your coaching?
I don't, by the way, I don't think that sounds weak at all. I think it sounds strong in the fact that you're willing to, you know what I mean? Like put that question out there and ask it. So I don't think it sounds weak at all. That's the first thing I would say. In fact, I said it, I think earlier here, don't worry about criticism from someone you wouldn't seek out advice from. End of story, right? And I think you're going to find when there's another saying, I'm probably going to mess it up, but it's something to the effect of, you're never going to get criticized by somebody doing more than you. You're only going to get criticized from people doing less than you, right? And I can tell you, this is one, if I'm, again, 100% truthful, which of course I would be, but like in my own world, I send a lot of emails out and I speak in a certain way that invites a little bit of criticism. That's just reality. And believe me, before I decided that I was going to write these emails in a certain way, I knew that was going to be happening. But I also know that that's my personality, and that's just the way I want to put I think that I'm able to make my opinion, right, is that I can make a greater impact with the right people by being a little bit more direct, right? So what am I getting at? I get an email with semi-regularity telling me I am a dickhead, check your ego, all this. You could just imagine. My writing sucks. I send out emails like today, like I wrote one and it had like things instead of things, right? Like, look, again, the truth is I hardly proof anything I write nowadays because otherwise, because I got to try to get these things done in 10, 15, 30 minutes, definitely less than an hour. Otherwise, I would never get a daily email out. End of story, right? So if there's a mistake every once in a while, I just know that the people who are, frankly, the ones that I want to be reading them and learning from them are not really going to care if there's an S where there shouldn't be, right? I get semi-regular criticism, and sometimes I just got to put my big boy pants on, and every once in a while they get a nice reply that would probably, if you like my writing style, would make you laugh your ass off. Because I'll just go to their website and say, okay, well, let me have a little bit of a look, right? Like, who is it criticizing me? And then I copy paste a little bit and go like, really? Right? Really? You're criticizing me? And that's your bio? Okay. But at the same time, though, that and arguably, this is not something, in a productivity world, right? Is that something I should be doing? But I don't know. Every once in a while, I find myself doing that. Maybe that's foolish. Maybe it's even childish. Reality is reality. But I get criticized semi-regularly with those emails. In fact, even, with the podcast a little bit, like, oh, that's unrealistic or whatever. And here's the question. Is this somebody I'm going to seek out for advice? And obviously the answer is no. If they're sending me criticism, like somebody who doesn't like the stuff is just going to unsubscribe and move on with their life. You know what I mean? So the question is, or the statement is just that you just don't worry about criticism. You're not going to reach out to that same individual for advice, and then just move on. And if you are going to put yourself out there, if you're going to start doing live events, if you're going to start doing webinars, if you're going to start educating your city, educating your state, you're going to create that large goal. If you're going to, go and make a statement, if they're going to know who the hell you are, then believe me, you are going to get criticized. So put on your big boy pants, because believe me, it's going to be coming. And by the way, it's that old adage, like, either they win or you win. Right? Like, because you make, and by the way, in some cases, I've absolutely been criticized with different things and they're right. And I'm like, shit, whoopsie, that was a mistake, right? But I'm not here pretending like I'm perfect, right? I'm not here, that's at no stage you're going to see me say anything along those lines. And once again, I think it comes back to just having your style, owning it and being true to that. And that's, so that's my own world. So I'm not sure if I'm answering that the best. First of all, I don't think that's a weak question at all. I think that strategically is something that every coach needs to address. Like, what are you going to do? Like, Road Dog, you've experienced this. I've absolutely experienced it. Like, when somebody cancels their coaching with you, how does it make you feel? And then the question is, how are you going to let it make you feel? And are you going to go into you're going to cry in your Cheerios for a few days? Or are you going to, again, put your big boy pants on and just keep motoring and going, look, and in some cases, you got to be honest and go, well, you know what? I didn't do as good of a job. If I could have my crack again, here's what I would have done, right? Like learn from it. Ask questions. Don't all of a sudden create statements and answers around it. Ask questions. Is he right? Is she right? Can I be better? Should I have been better? If I could have been better, where would I have been better? How could I have stopped this person? How could I have created X, Y, Z result? So they keep cranking along. So yeah, criticism, that's just, it goes with the territory, man. And any coach who's going to create a lofty goal, just brace yourself. And again, so what you should do is create a plan so that when somebody, comes at you, that you're ready for it. Don't get surprised when a coaching client either criticizes you or cancels you and you feel slighted. Like, don't let that happen. Or maybe here's another example that I think is probably a good idea, right? Like, if you're listening to this and you make any kind of money, within the next short period of time, somebody is going to come to you and ask you for money. End of story. And we all know what the answer should be, because you lend a friend money. What happens? You lose the money and you lose the friend with ridiculous predictability. And in some cases, maybe it's somebody close and maybe it's somebody who really needs it. And then you are going to lend it, which is totally cool. And I have absolutely, the amount of money that I have lent out in my day and then not seen again, it makes my eyes water. Maybe not yours, but mine. Okay, but here's the solution. They are going to come and ask you. So my question is, what is your story and your answer going to be when they ask so that you don't have to be caught by surprise and not be ready for it. You get it? Like from a strategic standpoint, get ready for it now. So when it comes, you can just go, yeah, here's the reason why, right? And you should have that ready. The same, anyway, that's a little bit rabbit hole-ish, but not really. I think it's very similar to your coaching client is going to cancel, or you're going to get the email, or you're going to get feedback from your live event that you're not going to, like, and might put you in a situation where you got to second guess yourself a little bit. Decide what your reaction is going to be now. And by the way, that would be a great 45-minute session of time to think. Like, how are you going to deal with it? Because I know, and folks, if you're listening to this, and Road Dogg, you and I both know this because we've talked about it over a beer, the reality is that it can throw you for a 6. And when it throws you for a 6, as in like turns you upside down, that can screw up most definitely a day. Probably if you're human, it's a week gets smoked. And in some people's world, it can be significantly longer than that. Right? In fact, it can be so bad, and I've seen this, right, where really good coaches can't handle the criticism and they end up doing something different, and normally in the form of gainful employment and a job, because they just can't handle it. Versus time to think, 45 minutes with a pen and paper, strategically to decide how they're going to approach a situation when they get slighted or they get criticized, etc., would have solved all of that. And by the way, your coaching clients are no different. And I think that there's there's some really good, strategic approach that way. I think is good for the average person who gets a little bit undone by criticism, whether it be unfair or fair.
So let me add this in, because I think this is important. You alluded to the fact that we've had this conversation over a beer. I remember exactly where we're sitting at on the patio outside of the Eldorado. It was a beautiful summer day, and a client of mine had just said that he no longer wants to work with me, and I was beating myself up. Now I won't forget what you said, because you said to me, Road Dogg, you know what the beautiful thing here is? The way that you're reacting to this shows you care. And because you care, you're going to evolve and you're going to become a better coach as a result of this. So I think that's super important, man. Like there's so many people out there that just like take it as a good thing that you actually can feel that you care and that you care about your clients. Like how many coaches don't? And if you're one of the few that, yeah, it's going to suck. But yeah, like Karl said, make a plan for it because it's going to happen. It just is. And another piece that I'm going to throw out there when it comes to criticism, again, we all know there's keyboard vigilantes out there everywhere. Everyone's pretty brave behind a screen. But the one thing that I'll say is, and I got this from my coach, the only people that have input into my life are either my family, because, well, they're my family and they know me, the people that I pay for coaching, and the people that pay me. Those are the people that have a right to anything that I do to give me feedback. What I choose to do with that feedback, well, that's up to me. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to take criticism from somebody that isn't family, isn't a coach of mine, or isn't a client of mine. Your thoughts?
And again, I would say that time, look, dude, perfect high five. And again, everybody listening, take that because that is perfect, right? Again, somebody on social media, are you going to let them bring you undone? But a coaching client who's paying you, right? Like at the end of the day, starting with me, but nobody out there is pretending, if you are a coach and you're the legit, real deal coach, I mean, the whole idea is, we need to have a bit of a child's mind. You know what I mean? Like, if there's no destination here, there's only a journey. So I love it. If they're not, what is it? If it's not family, they're not paying you or you're not paying them, no thank you. Right? Perfect, dude. Love it.
That's so true. Like, and again, it makes your life so much easier just with that thought process. And again, as my coach, he said, well, what does my spouse know about my business? It doesn't matter what they know about your business. They know about you and the way that you react to things and the way that you handle certain situations. They're going to offer you a complete, third opinion in a sense, like that outside eye, that outside perspective that you may not even realize. So I think that's always super important too, right? They may not know your business, but they know you. But anyways, we could get into a whole, why do we always get into psychology? Like, seriously, are people going to get tired of hearing about Tony Robbins and all this psychology stuff from us, I think.
If they do, they hate us and they won't listen again, and that's fine.
All right, pal. So let's give this a maybe wrap up. Is there any sort of final thoughts to kind of conclude all of this stuff? We covered a lot of solid stuff here today. Any sort of final thoughts to wrap it all up in a nice, beautiful little package for people?
I think we got to go to Tupac Shakur. His quote, "Dreams are real, reality is wrong." Right? Totally. The reality, guys, that is a delusional statement. Okay? All right. I don't know. Maybe it's not. I don't know. Right? But Tupac Shakur, you know, he managed to not only look, he left a legacy, right, and a reasonable one. And I think maybe as coaches, these are the types of guys we should be listening to. Not that, by the way, Tupac is, you know, this is going to come too, right? Tupac is not exactly the guy that I'd be encouraging, you know, my kids to, you know, idolize and look up to, right? Absolutely not. But in terms of his success and whatnot, you can't deny it and the legacy that he left. And obviously, this is something that, you know, he thought, and I think that we could all learn from. So I think we're going to end this off with Tupac. Maybe next week we'll have an NWA quote. How's that? Eh? See what Ice Cube has to say. But that's how we're going to do it. What do you think, man? You like?
It goes in directions that even I don't see, but like seriously, when at the start of this, I'm like, I'm not even thinking Tupac, and here we are, right? Big Smalls next week. That's where we're going.
Like a little bit of 80s rap, 80s hardcore rap. But anyways, cool Road Dog. Appreciate you, bud. As per always, guys, we appreciate the awesome questions. That's how we keep this show going. If you got some questions, make sure you send them through to us. And anybody out there who's looking for a little bit of assistance, if you're a business coach looking to take it to the next level, you find us on focus.com. If you know of somebody who would be a fabulous coach, or you yourself think you'd be a fabulous coach, once again, go to focus.com and you can find some information. We appreciate you rating and creating a review for this podcast. Always appreciated. So if you do that, and again, if you can send it to anybody else out there who you think would be a fabulous business coach or needs this direction, that would be appreciated. So for everybody listening, we appreciate you. We'll be chatting you next time. Road Dog, appreciate you, man, and all your banter. And for all the folks that are sharing this and spreading the good word about our podcast, it's awesome. And we will be speaking to you on the next episode. Sound good?
Sounds great. Make it a great week, everybody.
Karl Bryan built Profit Acceleration Software 2.0 to train business coaches how to find any small business owner more than $100,000 in 45 minutes without them spending an extra dollar on marketing or advertising. This becomes a business coach's superpower. So as a business coach, you'll never again have to worry about working with business owners that can't afford your high-end coaching fees. Check us out at Focused.com.